Okay. I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Pollock-Rood,
Present.
Commissioner Circo,
Present.
Commissioner Sotile,
Present.
and Commissioner Valles.
Present.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the El Cajon Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the El Cajon website.
Commissioner Pollock-Rood?
Yes.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, my
And,
goodness.
And a
As a-
moment of silence.
Okay, thank you. And please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to the El Cajon Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the City of El Cajon website. Appeals of final decisions of the Planning Commission made this evening must be filed in writing with the City Clerk before 5 p.m. Monday, October 31st, 2022, and must include the payment of a filing fee. If you wish to speak on either a non-agenda or an agenda item tonight, please fill out a request to speak card located by the agenda and turn it into the secretary, who will call you up to speak when the agenda item comes up for public comment. We will ask you to give your name, the spelling of your last name. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. The display on the podium, as well as the other monitors in the chambers, will show time counting down. At 30 seconds, the podium clock will turn red, signifying you have 30 seconds until the end of your time. Applicants and individuals representing groups of people may be allowed more time if appropriate. All public hearing comments should be addressed to me as the chair of the commission and not into individual commissioners or staff members. As always, please turn off all electronic devices if you have not already done so. Pursuant to the City Council Resolution number 114-79, a commissioner who's received evidence related to a matter before the Planning Commission other than an unescorted view of the subject property is required to disclose such information at the hearing. At this time, we will take comments from any member of the public on any items of business within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not on the agenda. Under state law, no action can be taken on items brought forward under public comment, except to refer staff for administration or place it on a future agenda. If there's anyone who wishes to address the commission under public comment, please come forward. And since there's nobody, were there any public comments submitted prior to the meeting?
No, none.
Perfect. On to the consent calendar. A single motion will cover all items on the consent calendar. Does the commission wish to pull a consent calendar item for discussion?
No? No.
Okay. Does the staff wish to pull a consent item?
No changes from staff.
Perfect. So,
I move to adopt the minutes as recorded.
And
I
I'll
second it. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Perfect. Okay, and now we're on to the first item on the calendar. And why? Sorry, my apologies. Oh, thank you. Agenda item 2. Okay. 7-Eleven off-sale alcohol sales. And
Great. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Item number 2 for your consideration is a request for off-sale alcohol, but more specifically beer and wine sales at an existing 7-Eleven. So as you may recall, this item was originally scheduled for the October 4th Planning Commission meeting, but the hearing was continued to tonight at the request of the applicant. So the store is located at 500 North 2nd Street at the northeast corner of North 2nd Street and East Madison Avenue. To the north and west of the site is a Carl's Jr. restaurant and the remainder of the Madison Plaza Shopping Center. South of the site is the Town and Country Shopping Center, as well as the Liquor Town Liquor Store at 330 North 2nd Street. And then to the east, across 2nd Street, is the Diego Valley East Public Charter School. So for background, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act and the moratorium that applies to the city of El Cajon. So there is a moratorium on the issuance of new off-sale licenses in the city, and that's because the ratio of off-sale licenses exceeds 1 per 2,500 inhabitants within the city. But staff wants to note that the ABC has interpreted that this moratorium only applies to new applications only, and therefore the transfer of a license from a location within the city would not fall under the moratorium for a new license. Additionally, staff wanted to note that the deemed approved alcohol sales ordinance also applies to the request and was approved by the City Council back in 2013. The ordinance does indicate that a conditional use permit is required for convenience markets with less than 10% of floor area for beer and wine display, and that new stores need to be located in a census tract with capacity for additional licenses, with low to average crime rates, and that the new store must acquire an existing off-sale license from an over-concentrated census tract in the city and then relocate that license or eliminate the license. So essentially, looking back at the goal of the City Council in 2013, it was really not to increase the number of licenses in the city, but to allow more flexibility for the existing licenses and our existing over-concentration to be better dispersed throughout the city in order to meet the needs of the public. So specific to this property, the subject site is located in Census Tract 163.02. So this census tract currently has 4 active off-sale licenses, and the ABC's authorized number of off-sale licenses for this census tract is 3, thus making this census tract an over-concentrated census tract. So since the subject site does not have capacity for additional off-sale licenses, as defined by the ABC, adding a license to this location would not be consistent with the finding that the area in which the off-sale license is requested has capacity. The second fact that you see here on this slide is that the average crime rate for the city is 164 offenses per district. So when looking at crime, the ABC uses 120% of the citywide average as a threshold for average crime, and that would be 197 offenses. So the total number of offenses for the subject census tract was 280 offenses, or 170% of the citywide average. So a range of 120% to 200% of the citywide average is considered high based on ABC criteria. So here I just want to illustrate the crime rate map for the city. So you can see the blue areas have an average crime level, and then the yellow areas are high crime, and the red areas are very high crime. So I identified the subject site with a white star, just because it best contrasted with the other colors that were produced on the map. So you can see it's located on the very southeast corner of the census tract. And I did want to note that it is adjacent to the highest crime rate census tract that we have in the city. So immediately to the south across East Madison Avenue, that census tract has had 533 offenses, or 325% of the citywide average. So I also wanted to highlight, lastly, that this request was reviewed by the Planning Commission and City Council back in 2014. It was reviewed under Conditional Use Permit 2195, and it was pretty soon after the deemed approved alcohol ordinance was approved by the City Council. So again, Conditional Use Permit 2195 was for 500 North 2nd Street. It's the same request that you're seeing tonight. I wanted to just note for the record that the request was denied by the Planning Commission and then appealed and subsequently denied by the City Council. And I also wanted to add the voting record here just to illustrate some of our current planning commissioners voted on the request back in 2014. So Commissioners Circo, Moroz, and Sotile had all voted to deny the request back in 2014 with the same circumstances of an over-concentrated census tract and high crime rate. So staff is recommending denial of the conditional use permit because the required findings can't be made, and that's specifically, again, due to the census tract associated with the subject site having an overconcentration of existing off-sale licenses and because of the high crime rate. So staff's available to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'd like to open it for public comment. If anyone, yes,
we do have some questions.
Sure.
I have one. The fact that there's a school across the street from the 7-Eleven, will also that have any bearing on it?
There's an exemption for convenience markets with less than 10% display area to apply for a conditional use permit, so the distance requirement does not apply.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just voted yes. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time for the question, but just to find out, is there a different condition that exists now that the application is coming back around, or if it's just trying again?
Each time a conditional use permit comes forward, staff's analysis is based on the number, the number of licenses that are in each individual tract and the specific level of crime associated with that census tract. So, the data back in 2014 would have been slightly different for the number of offenses and the crime rate, but they still remain consistent at the high level and the over-concentration. So it's essentially the same request, but looking at current data.
Any other questions? Okay, let's open it for public comment.
We have 2 speaker cards. Bruce Evans.
Good evening. I have some copies. I have 9 of them. They're color copies that would show you the inside of the store. If I could circulate those, please.
That's fine.
Good evening, Bruce Evans. Last name is Evans. I'm here tonight representing Kashmira and her husband, Tushar Barucha. They're the franchisees of this store, and I'm also representing 7-Eleven. There's just 2 speakers tonight. Kashmira will not need more than 3 minutes. If I could respectfully ask for an extra minute or 2, if I need it, I would greatly appreciate it.
That's fine.
Okay. First of all, thank you to staff. They've been very professional throughout this process. We have some disagreements, which I'll get to. And thank you to the Commission for the continuance a couple of weeks ago. COVID finally caught up to me after 2.5 years. Great now, tested negative, all good. But I do appreciate the continuance. Commissioner Valles, if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, I apologize. Valles, okay. Before I get started, I want to address your question right off the bat. There is something different. I wasn't here all those years ago when 7-Eleven came in. It was a different franchisee at the time. I did read the minutes. What's fundamentally different is we found a license that we could buy and to transfer out of El Cajon or cancel that license. They didn't have that as part of their application last time. So I think that's key because it makes us, I would argue, compliant with this ordinance that we're going to talk about. It also makes us fundamentally different from the Aldi application that I know was in front of you a couple weeks ago, and I did watch most of that hearing. So I'm going to start with the statute because if we can't overcome the statute and we can't overcome the ordinance as staff is applying it, then we don't even get to the commission exercising your discretion, and that's not how the state statute is supposed to work. So just a little bit of background, what's commonly referred to as the Caldera Bill. He was the assemblyman that pushed this forward in 96 or 97. And the idea was that if a city did not have a conditional use permit ordinance like El Cajon does, then a city might not have a good opportunity to weigh in on the state alcohol licensing process. They want to make sure that the cities had that opportunity, again, if they didn't have a CUP ordinance. So they created these triggers, these two baselines, which is undue concentration and then the crime. The undue concentration, and this is key, and this is where I think staff is clearly mistaken, respectfully, is the statute doesn't speak to a capacity for a certain number of licenses, that they reached capacity. That's not the purpose of the statute. The purpose of the statute is for you to exercise your discretion. You can exercise your discretion and conclude there's too much alcohol in a particular area, it's a good project, it's a bad project. That's your discretion. That's what the intent of the public convenience or necessity statute is. The intent is not to stop the conversation when a census tract has undue concentration. So if you think about it, if you're going to put the alcohol in commercially zoned districts for retail, you will end up often with undue concentration because of good land use planning and zoning, not in spite of it, because the ratio that the ABC comes up with, it's based on census tract population, where people live. And people don't tend to live where you're going to concentrate the retail uses. So it's not a determination by the state or the ABC that this is the only amount of licenses it should issue and that anything beyond that is too much. That's for you to decide. That's part of your discretion. So, again, we found a license to buy. We're well aware. I tried to do my homework. I don't want to put a client in any situation that has a project that's dead on arrival. But we took our time. We found a license. That's the Vaughn's license. It's a Type 21 liquor license. We're going to move that license out of the city of El Cajon, and if we can't move it out, we have a pending application to do that, we're going to cancel it. That makes it a dead license for purposes of the statute. So clearly we comply with the first prong. I think it was evident in the Aldi hearing that the ordinance is not working like it's supposed to. It's precluding you from exercising your discretion, and it's killing good projects. And I think most importantly,
Yeah, we have another minute. We gave you another minute, so just wrap it up.
Okay.
Perfect.
There are one in every 4 licenses in this city is a liquor store. Under the staff's interpretation of this ordinance, you're insulating those liquor stores. We have 2 liquor stores in this census tract, and there's only 4 licenses. You're insulating those non-conforming liquor stores without being able to approve new businesses that are conforming that the city has all the control over. So that's the point. And I just want to reiterate, if you look at these pictures, you'll see this is a small grocery store. The days of, soda pop and candy and that being it, that's gone. They have fresh food delivered to that store every day. If you look at those photos, you'll see milk, you'll see fresh juice, you'll see bread, fruit, you'll see all of that. So this is a good project. We comply with the statute. You should be exercising your discretion to make that determination. But we did our best. I think we brought forth a good proposal, and we would ask that you exercise your discretion. I'm sorry I went over.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The Vaughn's liquor license, the Type 21, Vaughn's closed down a long time ago. So the license was still active when you purchased it? Because I thought it was inactive.
Oh, great question. So staff in their report, they said they don't consider it basically a good license to buy. The statute says you have to transfer or cancel an existing license. It is absolutely an existing license under the plain meaning of that statute. And it's existing because it hasn't been canceled yet. A license can still be maintained in surrendered status even if the business closes. It could be used in El Cajon. It could be used elsewhere. It can be bought and sold. We have a deal now to buy that license and move it out of El Cajon or cancel it, either one. But it is an existing license. The use no longer exists, but for El Cajon purposes, That license is valid. They're still paying fees on it, and it is surrendered, but also considered an active license for purposes of the ABC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Kashmira. I'm the franchisee of the 7-Eleven, and that's my husband. We both run the store from last 7 years.
Can you have the spelling of your last name, please?
Yeah, Kashmira Barucha, Bharucha.
Thank you.
So I've been running that store from last 7 years, and we serve our community. Like me and my husband, we both work mostly 6 to 7 days. We're always there. So, and for our customer, we provide a lot of things. So one of them, we would like to add one beer and wine, what they look for every single day. Even right now, they come and look for it. And of course, there is a crime area, but we are always there, and we keep our store very secure and safe for our customers to serve. So, yeah.
Thank you. And any questions?
Any questions?
I just have one. So I know that 7-Elevens are open 24 hours.
Yes.
But what are the hours that, if you were allowed to sell liquor, that you'd be able to sell?
I think we have a conditional license applied for it. So it's.
Sure.
Okay.
It's just kind of a standard question.
It's a great question, and I just didn't get to that. So we volunteered a bunch of conditions as part of the application. I won't go through them because you could read them. One of the conditions we volunteered was an hours restriction. So the state default time is 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. That's the maximum. We volunteered 8 a.m. to 12 midnight. If you wanted it to be 10 p.m. cutoff, we could do it. So the hours are, we'll do whatever you think is appropriate. But we did restrict the hours voluntarily. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Another thing, we're not going to be, I think, serving single beer, so that's not going to attract a lot of homeless people and crime area. Crime is going to be mainly for our neighborhood. That's what we want to serve.
Perfect.
Any more questions?
I don't have a question. No. Oh, yeah, my mic's on. I don't have a question, but I do live in the neighborhood. I've been into your store, and it's very clean, and we appreciate that very much.
Thank you. That's what we serve. That's why we're there all day. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
No more comments.
I move to close the public hearing.
I have a second.
Oh, were you looking for a second?
Second.
Yes, I'll second.
Perfect.
I'll second that.
Vote, please.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
For discussion on it.
So, yeah, we can ask staff questions. The big question is the active license from Vaughn's, the license that Vaughn's had, does that qualify for the removing one? I'm trying to remember. Let me look it up. I remember that we had within the tract, we wanted to remove an active license as part of the reducing the number of active licenses. Let's see. And I thought I remembered, and this might be a different type of license where it was buy two and remove one, you get to keep the other one. Possibly.
Oops. Was that Vaughn's of the
Yes,
same
there-
tract or a different tract of this location?
The Vaughn's was in the same census
Same
tract.
census tract?
Yeah.
So in the staff report for the attachments, we included the list of licenses that are part of the Vaughn's census tract. So it's actually, since it's north of Broadway, it is in a low crime census tract, and it is. Give me 1 second.
Is Vaughn's in another census tract?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I forgot Broadway is the.
But where the Vons used to be is a low crime area?
That's correct.
It looks like there's currently 5 in the track that they're asking.
The Vaughn's is located in Census Tract 165.02, and they have the one surrendered license for the former Vaughn's. That was the license that in the staff report we indicated that staff doesn't consider that to be an existing license because it's surrendered and no longer in operation. So looking back at the intent of the City Council when adopting the deemed approved alcohol sales ordinance, they wanted us to limit the number of licenses and reduce those to be in conformance with the concentration levels required by the ABC. If you look at the attachment, there is the number of licenses that would be allowed in Census Tract 16502 for off-sale would be 4 licenses. And then, like I indicated earlier, there is the 1 surrendered and then 7 existing licenses. So that is an over-concentrated census tract. I think the thing that I would like to clarify as it relates to the applicant's representative statements is his statements were correct as it relates to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act and state law as it relates to public convenience or necessity findings when approving alcohol outlets in over-concentrated areas. I think the nuance is that the City Council in 2013 decided that they wanted to go beyond that and provide guidance to the public as it relates to how El Cajon wants to handle off-sale alcohol licenses. And that's where the City Council direction through the code says we don't want to further exacerbate over-concentrations in existing census tracts. And what we want to do is have census tracts that are over-concentrated be allowed to move a license elsewhere in the city where there's not an over-concentration. So those are the facts that we had communicated to the applicant as it relates to this request. Obviously, he has a different reading of that. But I think from looking at the overall intent of what the City Council was trying to achieve with the ordinance and the facts related to overconcentration and crime rate, that's how we arrived at staff's recommendation.
May I ask a question about that status of the surrendered license? So I do see here where it says status surrendered, and then it says expiration date June 30th, 2023. So if Vaughn's chose to use this license elsewhere, is it still an active license for them to use?
I think.
Or is that, I mean, I know that's not necessarily what we're looking at here, but to me that tells me if it really is a dead license, part of it, is it really a dead license? Or it's just they could choose to do something. I mean, are they in a position to sell that license?
So there's there's the 2 different ways to look at this, right? So the first would be looking at it through the ABC rules and regulations. So for the ABC, it's a surrendered license, and it does have the ability and it has certain rights associated with a surrendered license. But for the city, what we would be looking at if they tried to move that surrendered license, we would be applying the same criteria that we applied to Aldi at the last meeting and that we're applying to 7-Eleven today, which is, are you proposing to move that license elsewhere? So as we talked about a minute ago, the census tract where the surrendered license is located is over-concentrated. So there could potentially be an opportunity, since it is an over-concentrated tract, for a license from that tract to be moved elsewhere. But the nuance of whether or not surrendered counts or doesn't count hasn't really been discussed or reviewed by the Planning Commission. I mean, from staff's perspective, the use has closed, and looking at the intent of what the City Council was trying to achieve, they're trying to close down or move existing off-sale licenses to other locations within the city. And so that's why we took that approach in the staff report.
So for clarification, if this was an active license, the Vaughn's still existed, or it was some other store, and they were looking to purchase and move it out, then that would that would fit more what you were trying to achieve as far as moving it to an area, something actively being used, that now we're no longer going to sell alcohol and you can have this license and move it elsewhere.
Correct.
Does that sound right? Okay.
It's just the second criteria, though, that is the issue as well at this location on 500 North 2nd Street is that that tract is still over-concentrated, and so we don't want to further exacerbate that over-concentration.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So if they were to take that suspended license and move it to an area that wasn't over-concentrated or didn't have the crime rate or met all the criteria, then they could use that license. But because this area has, some of the factors that don't fit in, that's why it cannot be moved to that particular location.
So I would just state, for the record, a lot of hypotheticals
Yes.
in that circumstance, but it would be any new request for an off-sale alcohol license anywhere in the city, whether it was this license being the surrendered Vaughn's license being relocated elsewhere, we would look at it within the context of the deemed approved ordinance for over-concentration and crime rate.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
I have a question. Actually, two questions. I noticed in your presentation that you had 882 calls, and verbally you said 280. So I was wondering if that was just a topographical error, or I'm misreading.
I think it's the difference between the number of offenses and then the percentage above average.
Okay.
So
The
let me see if I
slide.
can go back to that statement.
It was in the very beginning.
Yeah.
So the average crime rate in the city is 164 offenses per district.
Uh-huh.
And then up to 120% of the citywide average is considered to be average. So that would be up to 197 offenses. And so when you look at the total number of offenses in Census Tract 163.02 was 280 offenses, or 170% of the citywide average.
Okay.
But I
verbally,
did see that 882 number too.
I saw
Yeah.
880
Yeah.
That was in the slideshow.
on the
In
slide.
the slideshow.
Oh, okay.
So that was a
I
mistake
apologize.
on the slide. Okay. And my next question is, have the police department commented on this situation, on this agenda item? Have you reached out to the police?
Yes, we coordinate with the police department on these, but typically the police department looks at the safety-related issues in the conditions of approval. So they're looking at, the location of alcohol display in the store, the hours of operation, and those types of issues. And so when a request doesn't meet the initial criteria of being in a census tract that it can accommodate an additional license, then we don't have that additional feedback from the police department about what conditions they would deem to be appropriate.
Okay, it's right next door to a very high census tract.
Crime.
Yep.
Yes.
Across the street.
It was right across the street.
It's also across the street from a
Very low.
average, or was it
Yeah,
average or low?
Average.
Yeah.
Average or low? Okay,
average.
Average. Okay. Thank you.
You had a question?
Yeah. So this shares some features with the Aldi store that we saw 2 weeks ago. Mostly, we've got the same two statistics that we're facing, and then there's the Second Avenue. The Second Street has a lot of shops, a lot of liquor stores. It's one of the freeway connectors. It's a place where everybody goes by, or I don't know if everybody, maybe half the city goes through Second Street.
Yes.
And living right off of Second Street, I see all the traffic. And I also do note, living right there, that the Second Street, or this particular 7-Eleven, is one of the cleanest ones that I've ever seen and been to. And I appreciate that they're able to run such a nice shop and keep it. I don't see homeless people sleeping outside at any time. I don't know that this would qualify if we were to look at rewriting as we rework the zoning ordinance. I don't know that we would qualify this as a regional outlet, because it's really just a bunch of strip malls going down the second corridor. And it's not really a large commercial area. It's just the tip of the block and then it's residential packed all the way back. I think you have to cross Ballantyne before you get to commercial again.
Yeah, in both directions, there's a lot of, residential.
Yeah.
So,
I think that this is a great candidate for a license, but we don't have the space for it. And that's the quandary that we
Yeah.
face. And most of the applications are in these areas where it's a corridor, there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of customers that are close by, but because it's also over-concentrated already. And Mr. Evans pointed out, we do have liquor stores that are just hanging out, and we can't close them. That's not our job. That's not the city's job. But until some of the liquor stores close, we've got these high concentration districts that we can't seem to get people out of.
yeah, unfortunately. No, it would be a great addition, yet it's all based on what we're kind of limited based on the dynamics of what's written on the books, and that's what we kind of have to adhere to. Would be great if we could get a liquor store to close, but unfortunately, like you said, we're kind of stuck. So, did anybody have any other questions?
I don't.
Okay.
Like to make a motion? Okay. I move to adopt the next resolution in order denying the request to add off-sale alcohol to an existing convenience store.
I will second that.
Vote.
Motion carries by unanimous votes.
We appreciate you doing business in El Cajon.
Okay. We're on. Okay. Now we're on to the next public hearing item. As I move up here, some people are much more organized than me. Okay. Okay, here we go. Apologies. Okay. So the agenda item 3 for the Melody Lane townhomes. Do we have any questions on that before we open? Staff?
Thank you, Chair. I'll provide staff support.
Perfect.
Good evening, Honorable Commissioners. My name is Mike Villione, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is a request for a specific plan and tentative subdivision map submitted by City Ventures Home Building, LLC. The proposed specific plan would authorize the development of 29 new condominium townhomes at a vacant site on the north side of Melody Lane. The project would include 4 different floor plans, which feature a minimum of 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and an attached 2-car garage for sale at market prices. The project developer would install new driveway, sidewalk, and a street tree in the public right-of-way along Melody Lane, as well as private improvements and amenities for use by residents. The project site is located on the north side of Melody Lane between East Main Street and Comet Lane and is shown in blue on the slide. The ultimate site area is 1.47 net acres after accounting for a proposed lot line adjustment, which would exclude the area in yellow on the slide. The subject site is an undeveloped flag lot with limited frontage of 30 feet along Melody Lane and has historically been used as storage for recreational vehicles associated with the Juniper Trailer Park to the immediate adjacent west. Surrounding uses also include single-family homes to the south, a church to the east, and auto repair facility to the north. The site is relatively flat, with a maximum elevation change in the order of 2 feet from the project entrance towards the center of the site and 1.5 feet from the west to the east. It is also worth noting that the subject site is within a half mile of public transportation, grocery stores, and other commercial services on Main Street. The property is zoned RM 2200 and designated medium density residential in the general plan. These designations correspond and are intended for multifamily residential development up to 20 dwelling units per acre. The RM 2200 zone would permit attached and detached multiple family residential dwellings, including common interest developments. The proposed density of 19.71 units per net acre and use attached multifamily condominium townhomes are consistent with these designations. A tentative subdivision map for a common interest subdivision consisting of 1 lot and 29 condominium residences is proposed with the specific plan. According to the zoning code, a specific plan may be requested by an applicant where circumstances in a particular portion of the city require a more detailed framework of development and standards that are set forth in the general plan and zoning code. Such circumstances include the size and shape of the property and unusual conditions requiring special considerations for access. The subject site satisfies these criteria and is unlikely to develop at anticipated general plan densities given the property's limited flag frontage, the zoning code prohibition on creating flag lots in multiple family residential zones, and the RM 2200 lot coverage limitations, which are inclusive of paved areas for parking and driveways. Consequently, a specific plan with site-specific regulations is an appropriate entitlement application. This is the proposed site plan included with the specific plan. The 29 proposed units are incorporated into a 6-plex, 7-plex, and 2 8-plexes accessed from Melody Lane via 25-foot private driveway. A common courtyard is located at the center of the site, adjacent to the 7 visitor parking stalls, and includes a shade structure with barbecue, bicycle parking, and seating in a landscaped setting for common use. Additional bicycle parking is provided in each garage, and a secondary common space pocket park with trees and seating is proposed in the northeast corner of the site. RM 2200 setbacks are observed by the site plan and include an increased 15-foot setback from the single-family properties to the south and a larger setback of up to 16.7 feet from the commercial property to the north for all but the northwest corner unit. 6-foot masonry walls with an additional 2-foot screening extension along the northern property line will provide an additional buffer between the existing adjacent uses and new residences. It is also important to note that the units closest to the existing dwelling units to the south and mobile homes to the west are only 2 stories in height to limit their presence along these property lines and create stepped massing across the subject site. The proposed project includes approximately 6,635 square feet of open space as defined in the zoning code, which exceeds the requirement for 225 square foot per unit. Landscaping and trees are clustered in the common areas, as described in the previous slide, and along the westerly property line. The exterior yard area is available after accounting for the required access and boundary wall, will be landscaped where feasible, and a 24-inch box street tree is proposed to the east of the project frontage in the parkway. The proposed project is consistent with the architectural guidelines, which emphasize quality and compatibility with surroundings as primary considerations. The buildings can be described as being of Spanish Mediterranean style, elements of which are found throughout the community and are of a high quality. The buildings include white stucco exteriors with varied roof angles, pop-outs, overhangs, and balconies. Ornamental metalwork and fixtures, apparent wood elements, and roof tiles that mimic terracotta are included in elemental tones to unify the design. Staff have included a condition requiring screening of rooftop mechanical equipment from public view to ensure consistency with guidelines and compatibility with surrounding uses. Shown here is the northerly building as it would appear from the commercial property to the north. The maximum height of all proposed 3-story structures is 35 feet, consistent with RM 2200 standards. This is the southerly building as it would appear from Melody Lane and the single-family homes to the south. This building is 24 feet tall and does not include any second-story balconies. In order to recommend City Council approval, the Planning Commission needs to find that the proposed specific plan serves the public interest and that it will implement the city's general plan. Draft findings are included that determine the specific plan serves the public interest by increasing quality housing and home ownership opportunities, and that the general plan is implemented through the transition of the property to multifamily land use. Draft findings necessary to approve the tentative subdivision map are also included in accordance with the subdivision ordinance. a public comment expressing interest in reforming city landscape regulations and requesting additional native planting for the project was submitted via email and has been provided to commissioners on the dais. The proposed project is exempt from the environmental review requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15332, Class 32 exemption for infill development projects. Staff therefore recommend that Planning Commission recommend City Council approval of the CEQA determination, specific plan, and tentative subdivision map. This concludes staff's report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yes, Mr. Viglione.
Yes.
I have a question regarding the units, the separating walls between from one unit to the next. Are they firewalls?
I believe the building code would require firewalls in those circumstances.
It does include firewalls. Okay, our building code. Okay.
It's also worth noting that these will be reviewed during plan check for construction applications as well.
Okay, yeah. Insurance purposes, usually most insurance companies require firewalls because they don't want the fire to spread from one unit to the next unit, especially your neighbor. Next question, or maybe a comment regarding native vegetation. I just want to state that there are many deserts that have been converted to lush areas because of irrigation and so forth. I don't think that native vegetation is absolute necessary. Whatever vegetation works and it's congruent with the project and works well, I don't think we should be stuck with native. It sounds good, but I think whatever is pleasing to the eye and works for that area should be considered. So that's my comment on that area.
Perfect. Any other questions? No?
No.
Okay. So we'll open public hearing. Is there anyone to speak on this? Any questions?
Yes, we received 2 speaker cards.
Perfect.
Karen Kenrick.
Very much out of my element. I'm not a public speaker, but I live in one of the houses. I live in the actual the house that the egress will be at, right next to. Melody Lane is a very congested street. We have the density. We have apartments down the street that on some given weekends, and especially during the summer when all the college kids are home, there's no parking on the street. When I moved into my house, I enlarged the driveways so that when I had people come, I could at least have a place for them to park nearby. I noticed that on Melody Lane, there's no place to have a turn-in. There is no place for a turn-in to the development. There's no place to have it. The street is very narrow, and there's a lot of blind spots because there's a lot of cars that are parked on the street. There's a middle school right down the street from us that the middle school kids walk by every day. And even though it is a residential area that is 25 miles an hour, they do not go 25 miles an hour. It is more like 40 or 50. And I have a special needs niece that lives with me, and I have to walk her across the street just so that she is special, that she could get across. And she is 42 years old. They don't slow down for you. We've all the people that live on that street have posted signs, slow down, 25 miles an hour. And we've did it out of our own pocket. The police have even come, and when they come, they give citations right and left. You can't park a car on the street without having the mirror torn off. Also, that Melody Lane is also Fire Station 8 also uses Melody Lane as an egress onto Main Street at times. So I'm not really opposed to the whole project, but I think you're adding more fuel to the fire, and it's a safety issue. It's just so dense now as it is that there is really, and if you look at Melody Lane, a lot of them are cul-de-sacs. So the only way they have to get out is Melody Lane. So I just wanted to make that point, that it's more a safety issue to me. And you could also even contact the police, because the police are usually there at least once a month, twice a month, sometimes a couple times a week for accidents. So that is just what I wanted to bring to your attention. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Karen.
Second
I have
speaker.
a question for staff. The yellowed out area, is that reserved to enlarge that ingress for that particular unit, or is it, what is that yellowed out area?
The lot adjustment
Yes.
is because the two lots that Juniper Trailer Park has, the lot splits right down the road that they use to go around the trailers.
Right.
And so you saw how the lot circles or hugs the two houses at the south end.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking, I think it's 10 feet, 20 feet off of the lot that's being developed and giving it to the trailer park so that they can continue their route around.
Okay, so could that be used also for that development to
No, it will be separate private property, as Commissioner Serco suggested, for access at the mobile home park.
okay. And the road that goes out of the place is 25 feet wide, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And the fire department requires at least 20 feet so that their trucks can turn around, is that correct?
Yes, I believe Appendix D of the fire code requires a 20-foot access with 28-foot turning radii at the corners. It was reviewed by the fire department and approved as submitted.
Okay. And so far as Melody Lane, the traffic, I know we don't do speed bumps anymore, do we?
No.
Have you considered maybe doing turnabouts?
Turnabouts? No. Yeah, just a long-standing policy. Good afternoon, planning commissioners. But yeah, it's a long-standing city policy that we don't put in speed bumps. We could probably take a look at adding 25-mile-per-hour speed limit signs. We post some locations. We put radar feedback signs temporarily, just to remind drivers to drive 25, and go from there.
But no turnabouts. You know what I mean? You have like in the middle, you have some landscaping, and then you go around it.
No traffic
none of
circles.
those
I
like
don't think
that.
it's sufficient width to add a mini traffic circle.
That won't do. Okay, thank you.
Are there any stop signs nearby this to, if it potentially becomes a problem, they could add something there regarding that?
Most of the streets feeding onto Melody Lane have a stop sign, and the first stop sign would be at 3rd and Melody.
Okay.
So between 3rd Melody and East Main and Melody, there's no stop signs.
I do see all the stop signs coming into that. I assume there's a stop sign coming out of this development, but I just didn't know if something that could be reviewed after a time if there is a continual problem, because she said there have been problems. I mean, something to be reviewed later.
I believe we've got one more speaker card.
Can you repeat that comment? What did you say?
Well, she stated that there were lots of issues with traffic and the police and such like that, and speed. So maybe something in the later, if there's if this development comes in and it becomes a bigger problem, maybe at that point they might consider putting a stop sign or something in.
Yeah, we would conduct additional studies to evaluate the speed and
Okay.
work hand in hand with the police department to do selective enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other speaker cards?
Yes, Rachel McClellan.
I'm Rachel McClellan, McClellan. I live on Melody Lane, directly across from one of the homes that are hugged by this proposal development. and it is absolutely 100% a safety issue. I have 2 young children. When we moved in 5 years ago, when we bought the house, our neighbors came up to us and said, "Don't be careful. There's 2 kids that were hit directly in front of your house years ago, and I do not allow my children to play outside. We have a lush green front yard. They're not allowed to play out there. They're not allowed to ride the bikes. Cars zoom up and down that street at all hours of the night. My bedroom is right there against that street. I'm woken up several times a week because of cars flying by with their mufflers, and it's just insanity. We absolutely need speed bumps, but I talked about it with some of the neighbors, and it didn't seem like it was going to go through, so we kind of left it alone. I can barely get out of my driveway or into my driveway. Cars do not want to slow down. I get honked at every day when I pull into my driveway because I'm forcing people to slow down behind me. And it's residential. They do not care about the speed limits. It's just insanity. A couple questions that I have are, where will the construction traffic be entering? Because as Karen said, there's no room on that street. We don't have an extended driveway, expanded driveway, and we do have to park on the street when we have friends over. And one of my friends did have their side mirrors knocked off. Several times a month, you can go outside and walk down Melody Lane, and see mirrors in the street being knocked off. It happens all the time. It's madness. I can't imagine construction equipment making it down that street. There's absolutely no way. You'd have to cut off street parking just for that. It's just, I definitely oppose this project. It's a horrible idea. I'm also wondering why it's exempt from the California Environment Quality Act. And if you could possibly make access from Main Street, it seems like it'd be a much better street to have all this new traffic coming in and out from. And if any of these homes are going to be sold as low income and what the percentage may be. It's super unsafe. Also, my dogs, I do not open my dogs are obedient, but I do not allow them outside without a leash, because if they get out, they're going to get hit because there's just so many cars on that street at any given moment. And again, they're just flying by. You could post a flashing street light and they don't care. They'll just go faster. You could post one of the monitors that tells you how fast you're going. They're just going to go faster. I invite you to come over and sit in your car, come to my home, and just monitor that area. The street is a drag strip. It's literally a drag strip. Again, coming home from getting groceries, I'm trying to pull into my driveway, and people are honking at me because I have my blinker on, and they're having to stop on this residential street. It's very, very, very frustrating. So I can't imagine adding 29 homes with all those cars on our little street. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Apologize. No, thank you for sharing.
I don't know if she realizes that the units are going to have a parking, 2-car parking garages, plus visitor parking within the complex itself.
That's correct. I also wanted to note that the applicant is here, Karen Alves, with her design team, and she can speak to questions about the project if you would like to direct them to her as well.
Could you answer some of those questions for us? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here today. I'm Karen Alves. I'm Vice President of Development with City Ventures. One of the comments that was made was, how are we going to address construction traffic during the course of construction? So maybe you can share the aerial, and I can talk through that point. So the ultimate entrance to the project will be off of Melody Lane. During the course of construction, we plan to phase it in 2 ways. We will build the first 2 buildings to the south first, which will then become resident entry only. and then we'll direct construction traffic to the north end of the project. We'll work out an agreement with the property owner where the lot line adjustment will occur so that construction traffic can leave heading off of Main Street so that we don't have any conflicting traffic patterns with construction accessing while residents are living in the community.
Perfect. Does anybody else have any questions for her regarding this project?
Go ahead. No, I don't.
I do have a question, and this is in relation to the Melody versus Main Street. In other situations where we've got a narrow lane, but two properties fronting on the same street, we've been able to do a shared driveway agreement. This is entirely different because the Juniper is on Main Street, and this is a flag property on Melody. But would it be possible or feasible to have an entrance on Main Street, a shared driveway agreement? That, I mean, this is late in the game for you guys, but with 29 new units, that is a lot of additional traffic on Melody. Melody is one of the narrower streets in El Cajon. I drive up and down Melody a lot for work, and it is scary. I'm driving 25 miles per hour, and people honk at me because I'm going the speed limit. And it's not very wide at all. Is that something, I think I'm asking staff more than I'm asking our project developer, but would there be any possibility of doing a shared driveway agreement going out to East Main?
So a specific plan could be used to create shared access, but the specific plan would also need to encumber the trailer park property, obviously, and then it would require improvements reviewed by all departments to the trailer park property to adequately serve the proposed project site, and hadn't previously been considered as part of the application, probably due to increased cost or complication.
Yeah, I realize it would take a lot of improvements on the Juniper side to create access. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have access to Melody, but if they were able to split the traffic, so to speak, I think more people would want to leave on Main Street than Melody. Emergency access could be achieved both directions, but that would be a lot of development on the Juniper side.
So I just wanted to add that the project was reviewed by our Public Works Department and looked at it from a traffic perspective. And so Mr. Sanchez here can add to this a little bit, but there is sufficient capacity on Melody Lane to accommodate the planned vehicle trips associated with the proposed project. And it was evaluated for accessibility from Melody Lane for left turning as well. And in conjunction with that, it was also evaluated by Heartland Fire to look at whether or not there's sufficient access for safety standards and to make sure that they can meet the turning radii to provide service to the location. So the singular driveway from Melody Lane would meet the expectations of city staff and adopted standards for access with regards to that, as well as not negatively impacting traffic in the neighborhood. I mean, I would, I would concur with the assessment that in these neighborhoods off of East Main Street that there is a lot of traffic, but looking at our standards and the size of the street and what it's able to accommodate, it was determined that there is sufficient size and capacity for this project.
Thank you. Follow-up question for Mr. Sanchez. Would we be able to consider looking at a three-way stop at the driveway? This might help with the neighborhood zooming through. I mean, from Main to 3rd, there's no traffic control happening at the moment. And at this driveway entrance, if we were to put a three-way stop in, that would assist the residents getting out, assuming that people follow stop signs, but it also mitigates some of the traffic in that on that street.
Kids on skateboards, probably without helmets. I'm just not looking.
Yeah, when we evaluated this location, we typically look at how many trips it's going to generate, and we compare it to other studies that are done in San Diego County. Sandag publishes trip generation rates, and I've got that number. And we determined that for this type of site, it's going to generate about 230 vehicle trips per day. So it's not, over 24 hours, not very many trips, and determined about 19 p.m. or a.m. Peak trips that could occur in the morning, and then 24 or 25 in the afternoon. So it's, and the whole bigger picture is not very many trips to even consider maybe an all-way stop, because people are going to just blow through that stop sign. And when we do all-way stops, we look at national guidelines, state guidelines, and determine the amount of traffic that's going to be coming out of a driveway per se. If we did put in a stop sign, we're kind of setting a precedent for other small development for putting in, can you put a stop sign mid-block, and it doesn't work. So that's the dilemma with adding a three-way stop where it's not really warranted for stop signs.
Okay, thank you.
If I could ask a question. I mean, I live on a very busy street out here, and I have to wait quite a while for people to get out of my own driveway, not even a driveway like this, because I'm fairly close to a light, and it was a restriped road. So there's just one lane to come in and out, and then this center lane for all this left turning. So I mean, I certainly appreciate the concern about people zipping through and all that. I guess one thing, and I'll address this to you, is if you were to address your residents, if there's all this traffic on Melody and there's no signal or anything, now there's a potential for 2, 3, 4 residents to be backed up waiting to come out if there is just one entrance out. And people quite frequently are leaving kind of around the same time, either kids going to school or people going to work. So is there something where we're looking at a potential for being able to allow just even traffic to come out better? I mean, I certainly understand your point about the signal, or not the signal, the stop with that few trips. It's just that it'll be concentrated kind of at certain times of the day. What other alternatives could there be that would help allow residents to be able to actually leave and not get stuck behind each other, and maybe soften some of the traffic that's happening on Melody now, as far as the speed, not the number of trips, but the speed?
Yeah, we'd have to take a look at. I'm not sure if there's sufficient width to put in a turning lane. It could be looked at, but with the lack of width, then we were talking about removing parking, and that's the dilemma of trying to fit in a turn lane on a very narrow street. So we could take a look at it, but you just take it's like any other driveway. You just take a look at the sight distance. As you exit the driveway, is there adequate sight distance to safely get into the street? So all those factors have to be considered.
And regarding, since it is a walled, how high is the wall near the street so it doesn't impede on the visual? Is it a 4 foot?
The exterior yard for the wall, it's limited to 42 inches, so
Okay.
basically 3.5 feet.
Perfect. And then also I noticed that right next door there's a cul-de-sac that has about the same amount of houses, so it's just kind of similar to what's already nearby regarding to, and that's a double cul-de-sac, so it's not really adding much to what's already kind of going on in the neighborhood already. It's just more condensed, but so.
I think what Commissioner Circle mentioned regarding having an agreement with a mobile home park to use that thoroughfare or share it, I think that was an excellent idea. Because if there's a fire and that driveway is blocked, people have a way to get out through a different area. I don't know if that's feasible or not.
if I may, on that point. We don't currently control that piece of property. The owner to the park to the west wanted to continue to maintain that for access. That doesn't mean that we can't look into doing an emergency vehicle exit at that northern end, only for fire emergencies, but an ongoing shared maintenance agreement or shared reciprocal access agreement might be a little bit more difficult to do depending on what he plans to do with that property in the future. We can't control that, so we don't want to make any commitments to something that we don't know might be there in the future. But I definitely think we can be open to adding an emergency fire exit back in that area where it will be walled in. We can just add
a gate,
a fence there with a Knox box that could be accessed by fire in the case of an emergency.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more random question for you. On the landscaping plan, I was looking at the tree by the driveway. That tree, marked number 3, is that actually on the property or is that next to the property?
No, that is actually out in the public right away.
Okay.
So through the mapping efforts, Public Works has asked us to provide 4 foot of additional public right away into the street center line. And in that improvement, we would add a street tree there to improve the existing tree well.
Okay.
I would add that that there's conditions included to ensure that the tree meets, height standards for visibility and so forth.
Thank you.
So just a quick question, because I know they were talking about the gate issue. Would be in the last driveway there? We could do something like that, not as an open gate for leaving, but for fire and safety things as such.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
No.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Were there any other questions?
No more speakers.
Okay.
I move to close public comment.
I'll second.
Great.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thank you. Does anyone have a motion on this?
So it seems the biggest issue is the knowledge that Melody is a small street.
Mm-hmm.
I love the development look. I love the Mediterranean style and the stepping, the blocking. That's all really well done. We didn't talk at all about the aesthetics. You did a great job. Your design team did a great job. I love the courtyard. That's Mediterranean too. Lots of good parking. So the project itself is a great project. And I didn't even know that there was property there. I've driven by that, I can't tell you how many times. I've seen that gate, and I'm like, whose backyard is that? Yeah, because there's those 2 houses, and there's this one little channel over there. So I didn't realize it was just being used by Juniper. So this is... I love the fact that we're putting in multi-family homes, the 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. I looked at the plans. They're really ingenious. You've got some of the different stories that kind of slide over each other to make adequate width for the parking and all the laundry rooms and all that. Really great job on that. So the only concern I have is the egress. This little 25-foot channel into a little street that is really crowded. But it's a great looking project. I think we'll ask Public Works to keep a very close eye on that, because I don't think it's going to add a ton of additional traffic. It'll just be another street concentration of traffic. And I ford that street frequently, so That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah. Any other comments?
I agree with Commissioner Circo. It's a beautiful project. It's nice to see decent size property, in such a condensed place that you're able to make very nice size homes. And it's nice, even though it's I shouldn't say even though it's townhomes, but being, kind of those multifamily residents that there'll be homes, which I do think it just, it helps the neighborhood in a lot of other ways with value because you have people that are coming in. I'm assuming these are all going to be individually purchased, right? So that also helps, with people that have an interest in the home. It's not to say somebody might buy it and rent it out, but I imagine the rents would be pretty high for 3 bedrooms. But it's an opportunity for home ownership for people because this is less expensive than buying an actual single-family home. A separate, just dwelling. So, I think it is really nice. It is, I don't drive up Melody Lane frequently, but I have had friends down there, and I know the traffic is tough. And being a pediatric nurse practitioner, I'm always concerned about kids getting hit. But I'm also of that mindset that kids should not be in the street, even if it's maybe if you have a cul-de-sac, but even then you need to be. There should always be eyes on the kids. I see kids all the time on their bikes, on their skateboards, on their scooters without helmets. Unfortunately, we don't have enough police to manage that or parents that will make sure their kids are safe in that regard. But, I think this is still a nice project. I think it will bring good people into the neighborhood. Whenever we have vacant lots, there's always things that can happen with those vacant places that people pop tents and other things that shouldn't be there either. So that could bring a whole different issue than traffic. So I think it's nice to have something new come into that neighborhood. It also encourages people in the neighborhood to I know in ours, when we had some people fixing their homes up, we kind of look at our house and go, maybe we should paint, maybe we should fix our landscaping because everything looks nice around you. So that also can help with the values there. But, I know that Mr. Sanchez and his department will be keeping an eye on the traffic. He'll probably, if there are concerns, I'm sure people will be relaying it. I know that they've addressed things on Magnolia when we had issues and were able to make some other adjustments, especially if people were parking where it blocked views from driveways and things like that. So I do know that that's been addressed. But, yeah, I really like the look. And actually, any children in this neighborhood or in these properties will actually be off the street just by virtue of how it's laid out. So I like that part, too.
Well, I concur with Commissioner Valles and Commissioner Circo and all that's been said. And I think it's much better than what it looks like now with storage vehicles being there. It's a great improvement. But I also would like to add the caveat regarding ingress and egress of the emergency vehicles. I think your idea is excellent. And I think it serves the community much better to look into that as well. So I strongly would recommend to do that, to have, for emergency vehicle, to have a way in or a way out of that in case of an emergency. If that is possible, I would like to add that to the recommendation regarding this agenda item to the City Council.
You have a motion since you have a great idea to add to it?
Sure. Okay. I move to adopt the next resolution in order recommending City Council approval of the CEQA determination SP 2022-002 and TSM 2021-007. In addition to that, to see the feasibility of having an emergency ingress and egress regarding this project, subject to the conditions which have been delineated here.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thank you. So does staff have any additions?
So So if we're moving on to item 4 for other items for consideration
Yes.
or staff communications, there are no additional items from staff on tonight's agenda.
Perfect. So does anyone move to adjourn the meeting?
I will move to adjourn.
I will second that.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thank you.
All right.
He goes.